Happy New Year! I hope your holidays were enjoyable and filled with much film watching. I myself embarked on a film advent calendar challenge where I watched one film per day for 24 days and uploaded short reviews of these films on TikTok. This video is a compilation of all 24 reviews from that challenge. Now, one thing I didn't particularly enjoy was that the tension felt kind of similar throughout. The climax at the end wasn't quite as powerful as it could have been. However, three things that I absolutely adored about this film were: number one, Kristen Stewart's performance was absolutely breathtaking. The second thing that I'd like to mention is the sound design, which had this motif that sounded like a chandelier. It becomes quite a sinister motif. And the third thing that I loved about this film, the fact that they didn't try to encapsulate her whole life or show her whole life. It's about 3 days, a snapshot in Diana's life, and I think that's a really clever way of going about a biopic and something that I haven't seen before. A Korean Christmas film that's been given a few days release here in the UK. I'm glad that I caught it because it's unlike any other Christmas film that I've watched. It follows normal people going about their daily lives. Though I didn't buy the younger couple's romance, which had a lot of cheesy moments and not a lot of chemistry, I did really enjoy the exploration of love through the older couple's eyes. They've been through a lot, and it's nice to see a different perspective on love alongside the Christmas themes. I also enjoy how the premise was used as an excuse to explore this interesting collection of characters, and I'd recommend this film if you're looking for something new to go alongside your Christmas classics. I didn't enjoy how predictable this film was. It definitely falls into many of the Christmas cliches. However, unlike the totally atrocious holiday that Netflix gave us last year, Love Hard benefits from having some refreshingly new faces as the lead characters. I particularly enjoyed Nina Dobrev in this role. She definitely gave off Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City, but make it Christmas vibes, and I am all for that. I also think the situations the lovebirds were given to bond in were quite unique, especially the rock climbing and the caroling with a twist. Now, one thing I didn't enjoy about this film was the very insignificant love story between Trevor and Lucky. Ultimately, Lucky didn't have much impact on the plot at all and felt kind of thrown in. However, three things that I loved about this film were firstly the character of Phoebe. She's smart, she's trustworthy, and she saves the world. She's a perfect role model for young girls and a perfect protagonist for this plot. The second thing I enjoyed is how they interlinked the original Ghostbusters film with this one, including the brilliant cameos. And the third thing I really enjoyed about this film is the comedy. Phoebe's jokes were hilariously dry and dark and perfectly accompanied Paul Rudd's signature style of humor. I regret not catching this film in cinemas, as it's truly one of the best films of the year and definitely the better one from Ridley Scott. When I watched the trailer for this film, I was a little unsure about the casting choices. Indeed, at times, the three male leads felt a little out of place in this time period. However, for the most part, I was absolutely swept away by their performances. Not to mention Jodie Comer, who is brilliant in everything she does. The story is incredibly moving and incredibly important, and that final duel is potentially one of the most gripping fights that I've watched on screen. Don't be put off by the long runtime, as the structure of this film helps with the pace and keeps the flow moving. Truthfully, I'm not a big fan of musicals, and I think the story and themes of this film would have made it a great drama without the music. However, that said, I do appreciate that the music really brings this beautiful community to life and showcases just how multicultural and fascinating New York is as a city. It deals with a lot of poignant topics without bringing the mood down, and I can't fault it for wanting to inspire the dreamers and for just being a feel-good film. I'm not usually a fan of watching modern films that use black and white, as I find them kind of hard to get into and I genuinely miss the color. However, this film is definitely an exception, as its themes are uniquely suited to this type of presentation. It's based on a 1929 book of the same name, and its title refers to the term used for African Americans who had skin light enough to pass as white. This is a facet to white privilege that I haven't seen explored so specifically specifically on film before, and it's incredibly harrowing to watch someone have to erase their entire identity just to live a safer and easier life. This film is an incredible directorial debut by Rebecca Hall, and both lead actresses do well in carrying the weight of these characters. I'm glad that I gave this black and white film a chance, as it definitely surprised me. Jake Gyllenhaal is without a doubt one of the best actors of his generation, and there's literally not a single film that I regret watching that he has starred in. But nowhere has his performance been more crucial to the success of a film than in The Guilty. Because we spend most of this film in one location, and mainly at the desk with Joe answering phone calls that unravel the events of the film. It's fascinating to watch a film where the most thrilling and disturbing events happen in your head, in each audience member's head, aided by the brilliant writing and astounding performance by Gyllenhaal. I know some people will find it hard to empathize with someone who has everything on the surface, but this documentary reveals just how restrictive the conservatorship that Britney was forced into was, and how the incessant paparazzi and media skewed the truth and helped destroy her mental health. It may be hyperbolic of me to say, but it seems like she suffered a fate worse than death for the past 13 years, actually having no control over her life, whether that be with her family or her work. And every time she tried to speak out against what was happening to her, her voice was squashed until finally it wasn't. This documentary is a must-see for fans of the star, or for those just interested in understanding what all the fuss was about this year with the Free Britney movement. One thing I feel was missing from this film was a little bit more explanation about how the robot works, evolves, and learns from Finch, especially considering that Hanks's character has the expertise to tell us, and it's not out of the realms of possibility for the robot to want to ask questions to learn about itself. But that aside, I enjoyed this film, especially the premise, which gives an example of how one person finds a reason to live amidst an apocalypse. Tom Hanks's performances are always very moving, and this film is no exception. It's an interesting take on recognizable themes, and the robot reminded me of WALL-E, which made him very hard not to love. One thing I didn't enjoy about this film was the length. The most interesting stuff happens in the last 40 minutes, but it takes us 70 minutes to get there. I think some of the more repetitive scenes could have been cut out, and the subplot with the brothers simplified. Two things I really liked about this film were firstly the performances, especially Sandra Bullock, and secondly, I enjoyed the way the twist was introduced, and although I knew something was going to happen, I didn't actually guess it, which is always a plus. I liked this film more than I expected, considering the mixed reviews. The pacing was a little bit off, and I certainly feel like there was a bit too much faff that could have been cut out. For example, the repetitive scenes showing how the Eternals helped civilization, and the hand-holding that was involved during the twist. However, overall, I did enjoy this film for what it was. The action sequences are pretty spectacular, the cliffhangers suitably intriguing, and the themes make it quite an emotional addition to the MCU. My favorite characters were Thena and Gilgamesh, and I also really enjoyed the comedy that Kingo and his valet brought to the film, but I could have done without his cheesy finger guns. This film absolutely floored me. Not only did I come out of the cinema with tears still in my eyes from the absolutely heart-wrenching ending, but I also came out with a new perspective on the topics of choice and truth, which are discussed by the main character of Antonio with his daughter Jessie. These conversations alone are reason enough to watch this amazing film, but it also thoughtfully explores the issues that adopted immigrants in America face, including deportation. I admit I could have done without the out-of-focus shaky camera work that distracted from the moving story, but overall Antonio's experience is one worth watching. There are very few films that I would recommend and never watching, but unfortunately this is one of them. Lamb handles folklore just like another horror film, Midsummer. However, Midsummer provides just enough reasoning and explanation to allow the audience to digest the horrific events that are happening on screen. However, this is not the case with Lamb, where I was left scrambling to find meaning. Furthermore, the filmmakers let me believe for 2/3 of the film that one of the main characters had committed a truly atrocious act, and when this turns out not to be true, I felt deceived, and not in a satisfying way. Perhaps this film is an example of high cinema that is far too profound for me to comprehend, but I have a feeling that it's simply too enigmatic for its own good. Without spoiling it, this film more than meets its nostalgic quota, whilst also providing a story perfectly balanced between multiverse madness and normal human experience, with Holland's Spider-Man having to learn that not all of his good intentions have good consequences. It's one of the best MCU films to date, and if you want to hear my full review of it, please head over to my YouTube channel where I will be posting one very soon, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. One thing I didn't enjoy about this film is how predictable the twists were. The double, triple, quadruple crosses all felt pretty expected, and I literally guessed some of them exactly how they played out. However, two things that I did enjoy about this film was firstly, the three leads. They had incredible rapport with one another. I love seeing Gal Gadot as a villain, and I can't explain it, but there's just something about Ryan Reynolds' particular brand of comedy that makes it endlessly enjoyable. I also really enjoyed the Indiana Jones reference, and in general the adventure in the jungle part of the film was the most fun to watch, especially with The Rock donning his Dora the Explorer style outfit that we've seen him before in Jumanji. This beautiful film is based on Paolo Sorrentini's actual life, and perhaps that is what makes it so powerful. The conversations, situations, and character dynamics were mesmerizing and truly felt taken straight from reality. There is a bit of a non-naturalistic side to it, which the director explains is the mix-in of his imagination that brings his memories into a new cinematic form. It's definitely one of the best coming-of-age stories that I've seen, and I'm not surprised that it's Italy's entry for Best International Film at the Oscars next year. On the surface, this is a classic prison escape story, but what makes it unique is the historical and political background that the story is set in. These are no ordinary prisoners, but political activists who have been imprisoned for trying to help bring down apartheid in South Africa. This background gives a weight to the film that it otherwise wouldn't have, and the fact that it's a true story means that this film isn't simply about prisoners trying to escape, but it's about the meaning of freedom itself. These characters and the real people that they are based on risked life imprisonment to go back and continue fighting against apartheid. This moving story elevates the already utterly fascinating process of trying to break out of a prison. This film is, without a doubt, a beautifully made Western. It has an unnerving pace, not only from the score and the cinematography, but with these characters that struggle to hide the darker side of themselves. It dwells on themes of identity and explores how different people assert their power in different ways. I can certainly appreciate Jane Campion's technical and storytelling abilities as a director, but at the same time, I have to say it just wasn't my cup of tea. If you're a fan of the genre, I'm sure you'll enjoy it, but I just didn't find the pace very compelling, and there was just a little too many things left unsaid and a whole lot of repressed emotions. This film is a jumble of genres that at times feels a little silly, but at its core it's a story with a lot of heart. Not only that, but it has some pretty interesting writing and stylistic choices. For example, just like in The Guilty, another film I watched for the challenge, a lot of the film takes place in one location, relying on radio comms to deliver the story whilst we're kept solely focused on Maud. There was also some interesting cinematography, including turning the camera upside down and introducing the main body of the crew through individual fantastically lit shots. Personally, I really liked this film. I think it occupies a space similar to films with Sylvester Stallone or Steven Seagal, your classic tough guy action films, but this time with a female lead, and I would love to see more of these types of films. I think Wes Anderson's storytelling style is very suitable for this subject matter. It mimics the experience of reading an article. This creates a story that's quite to the point. It moves between locations, showing details in a very structured manner. Certainly this style is not for everyone. I myself find it quite difficult to emotionally invest in Wes Anderson's films. But in the case of The French Dispatch, I enjoyed having this collection of short stories that diversified what I was seeing on screen. And as is the case with any magazine where you might have a favorite article, I assume that a lot of people watching this film will have a favorite story, a favorite section of the film. My favorite was Concrete Masterpiece, which was just beautifully bizarre. This series is known for its existential crisis-inducing subject matter, and the fourth film adds a meta-narrative to the WTF mix. It may test the patience of some audience members, but I certainly enjoyed these meta-narrative moments, including the small details like the Simulate Cafe. In many ways, I think the first three films took themselves too seriously, and this one takes a far more light-hearted approach, which I feel was the best course of action for a fourth installment so far from its predecessors. There's certainly a lot to unpack, and I will be releasing a Matrix 4 explained video very soon on my YouTube channel, so feel free to head over there and subscribe so you don't miss it. This film simultaneously reminds me of John Wick and Ratatouille due to its themes, characters, and plotline. And it takes the best bits from both of those films to create something that is truly magnificent. It has the action and drama of John Wick mixed in with the heart and soul of Ratatouille. It may be the quietest and most subdued performance from Nicolas Cage, but it's precisely in this silence that he shines, making a truly unforgettable performance. I admit this film is not from this year, however I really wanted to finish the challenge with a Christmas film, so I picked one that I haven't watched before and heard good things about. Klaus did not disappoint, providing an incredibly refreshing take on a recognizable story. It's funny, entertaining, sweet, and very moving. What more could you want from a Christmas film? That concludes my 2021 Film Advent Calendar Challenge. I've watched 24 films in 24 days. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to see more videos, and comment with your thoughts on the topic. Have you ever embarked on a challenge like this? What films would you put on your list? For more film content, feel free to follow us on Twitter, Letterboxd, and TikTok. Links in the description. Otherwise, this has been Tea Break Film Reviews. My name's Michelle, and I hope you have a great day.